Chair, we're now live.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee for Tuesday, 7th of May at 10 a.m. My name is Councillor Roy Chamdell, and I'm chairing this meeting. Details of the business to be considered today are shown on the agenda. A little bit of housekeeping, first of all, fire alarm. I'm not expecting a fire alarm. If it goes off, it's the real thing, so please follow officers. And I think we meet outside the Miller's Tap, is it? Or something like that. This is rather appropriate for a licensing hearing. Mobile devices, like everybody else, please could you turn them off or put them on silent? The last thing we want is them going off and disturbing us. All right. Declaration of interest. Councillors, if you have any declaration of interest, please make them know now. None at all. No interest at all. Okay. Roll call. What I like doing is people to introduce themselves and what they're doing there and why they're doing there. So if you go from my right and go all the way around, you'll be seen, but you can only be heard if you toggle on and toggle off on these microphones. So please do remember to do that. Okay, so fire away.
Good morning, Chantal McLeod, Legal Officer for today's hearing.
Good morning, Councillor Becky Hagg on the subcommittee.
Good morning, Councillor Nelson West on the subcommittee.
Good morning, Darren Hughes, Director of People Strategy for Chungi Entertainment.
Good morning, my name is Paddy Were and I'm a licensing solicitor.
Good morning, Daniel Ferrer, Licensing Manager here as a case officer for this application.
Good morning, Liz Penny, Democratic Services Officer. I'll be doing the minutes today.
Thank you, everybody, for that. Everything is in Part A, so we don't have to sort of log off Part B. Just briefly go through how we go through things. You've got that on your agenda pack. Everybody gets an opportunity to introduce their case, first of all. You can get questions only from the subcommittee about what has been presented, so any clarifications that we need. This will be followed by, we'll have the discussion led by a subcommittee, so we can discuss all of whoever's here. We can ask questions of each other. It goes through the chair. Then I ask for a brief, and I emphasise the word, especially to our legal representatives, a brief closing remark. Everybody goes away, we deliberate, and you can wait for the decision, or otherwise we'll post it, or we'll call you back when we come to a decision, and that's how it is. Right, we can start straight away. Daniel.
Thank you, Chairman. The application you have in front of you is for a new adult gaming centre premises licence under Section 159 of the Gambling Act 2005, made on behalf of the applicant Congi Entertainment UK Limited, and it concerns the premises known as Little Vegas, 14 to 16 Station Road, Hayes, UB3 4DA. The application was received by the licensing team on the 9th of February, and the closing date for representations was the 7th of March. The application was sent to all the responsible authorities. It was advertised in accordance with the relevant regulations. No representations were received by responsible authorities. There were 4 representations received by interested parties, namely Councillor Janet Gardner, Ward Councillor, David Bruff, Hayes Town Partnership, Matthew Cashmore from St Aslam's Church in Hayes, and Habib Khalid. We received additional information on the 19th of April from the legal representatives, where they had additional written submissions, their case summary, their outline of their case, additional guidance from the Gambling Commission, and also their policies and procedures. Chairman, you would have seen my report. Essentially, it's pages 3 to 14, covering the areas of my observations, the codes, highlights from the guidance, and also Hillingdon's statement of licensing policy. We invite you, the subcommittee, to now consider the application in full. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. I love it when they say there's recommendations from officers, and you've given us 3 recommendations, one over the other. Do we have any cumulative policy on terms of applications such as this in the area?
No, Chairman, there's no special policy, which is highlighted in the report.
Councillors, any questions, clarifications on what's been presented? Councillor Nelson-West.
Yes, nothing at all from the responsible authorities at all? Police and that at all?
That's correct, Councillor Nelson West. There's no representations from responsible authorities.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to who wants to take the lead, sir?
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the committee. I did send in my case outline and some additional documents, and I'm going to really just focus on that if I may. We did reach out to all of your responsible authorities before we submitted the application, which is always this applicant's way to make sure that there are any localised issues that we need to take into consideration. And you will also see in your exceptionally helpful agenda pack that at pages 22 to 20, bear with me a second, 22 to 27, 37, what's called a local area risk assessment. So the Gambling Act asks operators to not just whack an application in, but to actually understand what the local circumstances are, to look what the local risks may be, and to put in that local area risk assessment how they will mitigate those risks. So it's very important that you, as a licensing subcommittee, if you hear a contested hearing, would want to see a local area risk assessment which is really drilled down into the local circumstances and produced reasons as to why there shouldn't be any issues if this licence is granted. So we sent that local area risk assessment to all of the responsible authorities, and we were very grateful that they all came back and said that they felt that we, with our track record as a company and what we'd done in looking at the local area risk assessment, were in a position where they didn't need to put any representation into the application. Chair, you'll see that there were then 4 interested party representations, and we liaised with your officers to say we don't want to contact them directly because we think that's a bit inappropriate, but through you we would be more than happy to meet and explain the company's track record of working with local people in where they've been granted licences, and we also sent the case outline, the local area risk assessment, and all of the policies that are we sent into the licensing subcommittee in advance of the hearing, and said that we would, as I said, in their terms, either on the telephone, through Zoom, or in person, we were happy to meet them and discuss them. They didn't come back and accept that offer, and none of them are here today in relation to their opposition. In relation to the company, you'll see from my case outline at Appendix A of the additional documents, the company now has 26 adult gaming centre premises licences granted to it. Many of those are in London boroughs. Many of those have attracted opposition. Some of those have attracted opposition from responsible authorities as well as local people. But notwithstanding that, they've all been granted, and they've all traded without any issue since they've been granted their licences. So you have an applicant who comes before you with an operating licence issued by the Gambling Commission and a very strong presence on the High Street, and I've listed all of the sites at paragraph 2 of my case outline, and I think importantly you can see from some of those they trade in what could be described as some challenging locations, and notwithstanding that they've had no issues since they've opened and traded, and that's really because the level of training within the company and the policies that I've attached to my case outline are, I'm happy to say, industry leading. They are a benchmark of good practice in the industry, and as a result of that we've had no issues with any of the premises that have been trading. Darren, who sits to the left of me, has significant experience within the sector, and if you have any particular questions of an operational level that I can't answer, he's here to be able to help you. He's also a personal management licence holder with the Gambling Commission, so he is again someone who sits at the top of compliance in relation to regulatory procedures in gambling premises. Your report very helpfully sets out the law, but I've also set that out at paragraphs 8 to 11 in my submissions. And what is a little bit different to, I presume, you, like most licensing authorities, you hear more alcohol and entertainment applications than gambling applications. The Gambling Act is quite extreme in how liberal it is. So you can see that under Section 153 of the Gambling Act, which is at paragraph 8 of my outline, you're asked to exercise your function in a way to aim to permit the application. So it's a very permissive piece of legislation, and in real terms there would need to be significant reasons in my submissions why an application should be refused, and you can see from the track record of my client company that hasn't happened thus far. And that's a mandatory requirement of the licensing authority to aim to permit. It's critical, I think, that as was highlighted, there are no responsible authority representations to this application. So your statutory advisors, for example, in relation to crime and disorder, the police, and in relation to under 18s, the child protection agencies have looked at our policies, looked at our procedures, and feel that we are robust operators and can be granted a licence in this location. And the LARA really is the document that drills down into the location. So it's not just a case of we've got good policies, we understand what the issues may be locally, which are highlighted in some of the objections, and we have policies in place to make sure that those risks are not real risks to cause you any difficulties in granting the application today. I've just put in paragraphs 11 and 12 a little bit of a background about adult gaming centres. It's interesting, really. Adult gaming centres are
Sorry, paragraph 11, 12. What page is that?
This is on page 5 of my outline. It's the additional documentation that was added later in. I don't believe it's paginated because my version isn't paginated, but it's paragraph 5. Sorry, page 5 of my case outline, which I think is the first document in that bundle. So paragraphs 11 and 12 are on now on page 5. So the subtle differences between adult gaming centres, which I was just about to say, is a horrible name. I don't know why they got the name that they did, but that's what the legislation decided to give them as a name. Very different to betting shops. So you will know from a betting shop nowadays, if you go into a betting shop, you will probably see the staff sat behind a security counter, and there will be live TV showing sporting events. So it tends to have people hanging around in the premises much more for much longer time than an adult gaming centre, because there is other things to do than an adult gaming centre where people tend to go in and play the machines for a shorter period of time. It's lower stakes, lower prizes, and they leave. One of the things in relation to adult gaming centres compared to betting shops is they are much more attractive to a female audience, so you'll see an awful lot more ladies in an AGC, where you will see very few, if any, ladies in a betting shop. It's attractive because of the style of operation and the low stakes and prize to a different clientele. Importantly, the staff are actually in the shop, so they're not behind a counter. So the staff are constantly interacting with the customers, which is a critically important thing. One of the documents that I've added into the bundle that I sent to you is the Gambling Commission's document, Customer Interaction and Their Formal Guidance for Premises-Based Operators. So understanding your customer base, interacting with them, seeing if anybody looks vulnerable, if their playing patterns have changed, knowing how to interact and record those interactions is critical for quality AGC operators. and it gives a much greater ability to do that because they're walking around the shop and interacting with the customer base, whereas in a betting shop they tend to be behind a security screen, as I was saying. So Chongi are able to exhibit compliance through these robust policies that I've asked. They've got a fantastic training package. They have what's called independent age verification testing. So a number of times a year, BACTA, which is the trade organisation, will organise a professional company called Serve Legal to come into the premises unannounced, and they will come in and see whether people who look under the age of 18 manage to not be age verified or play any of the machines. So my company, this company has a Challenge 25 policy, and last year throughout their sites they were successful in turning away every one of those test purchases that was arranged by BACTA. So that is, I think, testament to the fact that their independent age verification testing is again at the top of the tree. They also have mystery shopping, where they will have experts come in to their shops on a regular basis and test everything, as if it were a local authority, police, trading standards, environmental health test. I conduct some of those tests and have done it unannounced at several of their shops, and I use the Gambling Commission check test template in relation to those, and they've always been 100% compliant with the mystery shopping and venue audits as well. So again, testament to the fact that they are very, very strong at what they do in complying with the licensing objectives. Chair, I've just put in the following sections in relation to paragraphs 13 to 19, which is at pages 5 and 6 of my document, which just really highlight what the licensing objectives are in gambling, because there are only 3 in gambling as opposed to 4 in the Licensing Act. And you're really only engaged with 2 of those today, which is preventing gambling from being a source of crime or disorder, and C, protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. The middle one, B, ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way. Your own statement of licensing policy highlights that that's an issue for the Gambling Commission in checking the policies. It's not really an issue for site-by-site premises licence applications. So paragraphs 14 to 17, I've dealt with crime and disorder. And of course, as a starting point, you'll be happy to see that there are no representations by the police. If the police were concerned that there could be crime and disorder issues associated with these premises, they'd be here in front of you as your statutory experts to explain why, but they're not here today, and that's after we've liaised very carefully with them in relation to the premises and how they will be operated. And as I highlighted at the beginning of this section, adult gaming sentences don't tend to experience the levels of crime and disorder which other some alcohol and some betting premises tend to. And as I've put in paragraph 16, the demographic who use AGCs is far more mixed than betting shops, and importantly the physical layout of the premises, and you can see that from the plan at page 21 of your main bundle. The sight lines are exceptional. It's a good square box, no hidden areas. CCTV covers everything inside and outside of the premises, and importantly, you've heard that the staff will be circulating around the premises to make sure that all of those policies are complied with. So the other licensing objective that is engaged through the representations is the third one, which is protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited. And as I've said, age verification procedures and the BACTA independent testing is exceptional within this company, and they have never failed in the last period any test purchases. No representations from the police or child protection agency, and they mirror the Know Your Customer document that's put in by the Gambling Commission that's been highlighted in the local area risk assessment. Staff are trained to make sure that under 18s can't get into the premises. So the advantage that an AGC has over a betting shop is that the potential under 18 would be challenged at the doorstep rather than at the counter. So that's a real strength of the way that my client operates, having staff within the shop to make sure that under 18s don't actually get in to the premises whatsoever. And obviously the outside, we can only have the name of the business and very limited advertising, which is in compliance with the gambling code of acceptable advertising, and importantly, you can't see in to see what is going into the premises, so that would be something that would be covered off also by your planning colleagues in relation to planning. CCTV on the point of entrance, all the way through the premises. There's a large screen showing the CCTV, so everybody who's in the premises knows that they are having their presence recorded. Chair, I'm often asked in these cases what happens in relation to assessments of vulnerable people, and that's obviously a key importance to provide compliance with the licensing objectives. And this company is very, very strong at following that Gambling Commission guidance. They've spent a lot of money in having their own training policies. It's an online training facility now. Everything's kept up to date, refresher training. Everything's kept on site on an easy to access electronic platform, and there is constant, robust interaction with customers. So if you've got a customer, luckily this hasn't happened with this client, but I've been discussing this with another customer recently who exhibits a change in their pattern. So they're used to coming in and spending a few pounds on a machine, and then all of a sudden they've started to spend a significantly larger amount. There is a duty to talk to that person and see if there's been a change in circumstances, whether they can afford to gamble at the level that they are doing, and making sure that they're constantly monitored. And that's something that my client, I would say, is an industry leader in making sure that is undertaken. I've tried to really deal with the issues that have arisen out of the representations that you've got in your agenda pack by my case outline and the documents that I've supported. As I said, I've sent those through to those that have raised objection. Should this licence be granted, I know that my client would be very happy to reach out to Councillor Gardner and say, we would want to work with you if you've got any ongoing issues locally. That's something that we've done in other locations because we want to be responsible neighbours to other operators and shops within a vicinity of the application site. So, Chair, I'll leave my concluding paragraphs with heeding the warning that not to take too long over them until you've asked me and we've dealt with any questions that you have. But in all of the circumstances, I would commend you to grant this application. The legislation aiming to permit, I would suggest there's nothing in the representations that you've got before you when set against the track record of this company as to why it shouldn't be granted this licence here today. But we are here to deal with specific questions.
Thank you for that. Let me thank you for the extra 2 hours of reading you sent me. That was welcomed. Please be assured, this committee, under my chairmanship, we are fully aware of the differentiations between licensing in gambling and everything else. And gambling is something which I take a very keen eye on in our conferences that we go to, because I know the harm that it potentially can lead to. Right, going off what you presented, one of the things you mentioned was challenging locations in your statement. What do you mean by challenging locations?
Well, I think some of the issues that have been raised, so ensuring that if you are in an area where there are, for example, reach-out centres for people who are suffering from addiction issues, whether there are schools that are picking up at bus stops outside the premises, whether there are street people with chaotic lifestyles who live on the streets in the area, whether there are high crime issues, whether there's drug use in the vicinity, all of those unfortunate issues that we tend to see with more prevalence these days than we used to. So if you actually look at the list of where we've been granted licences, those challenges exist, unfortunately, in the vast majority of those sites, and that's why the policies need to be as robust as they are.
You mentioned about your customer base in terms of predominantly more women. Have you submitted any evidence that we have, or something from the Gambling Commission? Is there anything in the pack? Because I don't remember seeing anything.
No, there's nothing in the pack. I've not produced anything on that basis yet.
It's okay, that's enough. Okay. In terms of the schematic, I'm going to bounce about a bit because you've answered a lot of my questions which I had weren't sure about in your presentation pack that you sent us. The schematics, if you go to page 21, now you show a separate retail space, first floor. What is this going to be used for?
That's not part of our demise. That's a separate company that has a separate entrance and operates at the first floor. So that's nothing to do with us.
Okay, and the actual floor area. So would I be correct in assuming that area is totally sort of open and flat and one floor?
It is, yes.
Do we have any up-to-date schematics showing where the machines are going to be in terms of if there's any separation of machines?
We don't. I mean, the Gambling Act's quite bizarre in its plans requirements. It doesn't. I mean, that's what it asks you to submit an application showing you the licensed area. So the machines would be, for the main part, around the outside of the walls, and compliant with the breakdown of what we're allowed to offer under the primary legislation.
I was thinking of more in terms of what level of machines that you're going to have there, because there are B and C where you're going to have it separate. Are they going to be? That's why physically I can see it. Then I understand what is a requirement, but in terms of an application, we are just simple councillors. It'd be good to visually see exactly where these machines are going to be based. So, do you have any separation for the higher grade, the higher payout machine, should I say?
Morning, Councillor. Just to answer your question, no, there's no requirement for any separated areas, and we have never operated like that in any other locations. Potentially, just to answer one of your questions from earlier, we will always ensure that the customer service station or the desk or any areas where staff could be spending any majority of time would always be in direct line to the door. All of our training, all of our guidance lists that station or any potential areas where staff members will reside will always be in direct sight to the door, unimpeded, to make sure that no one can enter the venue at any point without being witnessed or noticed, and all of our training details that as well.
You mentioned training for staff. Do they go through all the pack that you've sent us? Do they actually go for this training as well?
Sorry, Councillor, I'll answer that one again. Yes, so my responsibility as Director of People Strategy is not only the compliance function, but also the training for all of the staff members. They will go through the detailed pack that you have been sent in writing. We've also now taken massive steps, and I've spent 3 months personally on a project to develop a full e-learning, and as Paddy said, industry leading, to ensure that is taken down into responsible stages. They will have immediate training on day one before they even step foot in the venue, because of the requirements that we have for them to understand that role before they take any responsibility. Training sections for week 1 and month 1, and it will fully detail everything you've got in the pack, but it will not replace it. So there are full stages here to make sure that it is broken down into segments they can understand, as we fully understand that when they turn up on day one, I will not operate like other operators where they throw them a book knowing they won't understand it just to get a signature. So we've taken great lengths to make sure at every single stage that they understand that and make sure that it's applicable to their role and they understand it.
Sure, they are tested on this in the audits as well. Certainly when I do the audits, I will take the staff. I know what the training is, so I will ask them questions to make sure that they can exhibit that they know what they have been trained on. So it's multi-layered, you'll be glad to hear.
Okay. In terms of, you've done a on page 22, your local area risk assessment. Did you find anything?
Yes, I think, well, I would hope that you will see through the detailed natures. I mean, I would say this as well. Some operators pay lip service to a local area risk assessment. I would suggest that this local area risk assessment picks up what the issues potentially could be and how we mitigate to make sure that that won't infringe the licensing objectives of the way that they operate. So, you will see at page 27, for example, that we've picked up there are loan shops in the area, and we've picked up that there are mental health outlet centres for Mind and MyNet at page 26, and what we put into place to make sure that anybody who is potentially vulnerable won't have access or be damaged by what, as you quite rightly say, Councillor, what can be a risk-based environment. That's why we've got to look at those risks and put policies and procedures in place through the local area risk assessment to deal with what we find on the ground.
On page 27, you've got something called a maglock will be installed. What is a maglock?
Sorry, Councillor. Yeah, it's a magnetic locking device for the front door. So what that enables to do is we have... It's okay. They're not very creative with the names. So basically the staff will have a button at the desk or a remote button and allow people in and out and be able to control that area.
That's coupled up with external CCTV as well, so if we see anybody that shouldn't be coming in...
We'll get to that
okay.
in the next stage. This is just on what's been presented, that's all. Councillors, any questions on what's been presented? Councillor Hagar.
Yes, just to ask you, do we have any more detail on the risk assessment, so time or time framed or even amounts in here, for example, where you have regular patrols, what that might mean? Thank you, Chair.
Could you direct me to...
Yeah, that's on page 23, under licensing objectives, protecting children. The whole report itself, obviously, is in there, but I wanted to know where you've got regular patrols, is there any more information regarding that? In other words, what does regular mean? Are there times and dates objectives attached to this report, and would it change?
Sorry, Councillor, I can answer that one for you. In regards to the training and development and in regards to how the patrols work as such in the venue, everything that we have is very strictly regulated around that no one at any time should not be able to see the front door. This training is incredibly important to me, and everything I have, even down to disciplinary action, will be taken against it, because we have to be very severe in that. Not because I want to treat the staff badly, but because we have to make sure this is understood. That front door to me is like a baton in a relay race. If you walk away and you drop it, we fail. Because anyone who is under 18, who is vulnerable, anyone self-excluded, barred, we fail at that point. So we make sure lobbies are in place to give the staff time to deal with those issues, but to make sure that door is always monitored is vital to us on 5 or 6 different counts. So it's incredibly important to us. We also do training in regards to staff for summer holidays, half terms, where there might be further sort of access, even things like parents bringing their children in to use the toilet. Any exposure to gambling under 18 is strictly prohibited past the front door. So even things like that wouldn't necessarily be straightforward, we try and always do that. And I would always be very, very open to anything that you feel is missing or anything else you want us to cover. Said I have great relationships from a number of the boroughs that we deal with. And I came into this business from this industry to try and do something slightly different, and to have those open relationships and that sort of stuff. So this is the reason that I get out of bed in the morning, is to make sure that this stuff is where it needs to be. Thank you.
Any other questions? It's not mandatory. Councillor Nelson West.
Thank you, Chair. You've answered most of the questions I was going to ask in your risk assessment, you know what I mean? So, and to me, it's very concise and would all you put in the risk assessment, could it be put into any conditions?
That's the next stage. Yeah. Okay. You jumping the gun a bit. So hold horses. Okay. Right. If there's no more questions, we've got representation from 4 representations. We've gone through them, so they've all been noted, and there will be obviously, there's nobody here, but there will be part of our discussion that we'll have later on. Right, we'll now move into the discussion stage. I'll kick off. In terms of staffing numbers, what kind of ratio do you have in sort of staffing numbers in this premises? I've got to, before I say that, actually, I did, on page 2 of your additional pact that you sent, Mr. Wool, I noticed point 3 is highlighted in the report. There's no other highlighted part in all your report. I wonder why that was the case. And then obviously bring your attention to how these applications are looked at in terms of each application on its own merits.
It's a very valid point. I would be making submissions that there would need to be a reason or evidence produced as to why the aim to permit should be overrun and this application should be refused. So all I was trying to assist the committee with was the fact that we've had this argument many times, where there's been local concerns about whether we could be reasonably consistent with the licensing objectives, and we've always managed to present a successful case. But most importantly, then, that's led to circumstances where we've never had a review. So I concede, as always, that quite rightly, as the Chair has said, every case is dealt with on its own merits. But I think if you've got an operator who's got a track record of getting licences granted against public and responsible authority opposition, and then proving that they do what it says on the tin, that you should have some comfort with that. And I won't repeat that in my closing submissions, I promise.
So we go back to the question about staff ratio numbers, please.
No problem, Councillor. So we would never aim to ever have any single manning or lone working. I don't believe in it from a customer service standpoint, from a compliance angle. I know other operators do, but it's something that's intrinsic to me that we don't allow that to falter. As I said, not just from compliance, but for customer service, for understanding, for observations in terms of customer interaction. It's vital to me. So we don't plan to do any single manning at any time. So there'll always be 2 staff members, and as I mentioned earlier, someone will always have to monitor the front door. It's in every single part of their training.
It was very comforting, actually, to hear how you say you're going to manage this premises in terms of problem gambling, should we say, where I read your papers and it was quite comprehensive, and it was warming to, if that is put into practice, in terms of these are the policies that you have in place, these are your staff. Could I just ask, do you have what's the roughly average age of your staff? There's a reason to that question. I know legally it might not be right, but I think here in Hillingdon, we're not anti-business. My own personal background comes from business. We are looking for good, responsible operators, whatever the trade is, whether it's licensing or whether it's your adult, and quite agree, the adult gaming centre, it doesn't just fit the bill, the name doesn't, but that's where we are. So what sort of roughly age group do you employ?
I'll answer this one carefully, councillors. I used to be a HR director, so I need to be on it. No, we have a varying age range. We don't tend to target one age group. We think that if our customer base will widely vary, we need to make sure that so do our employees, and that's all demographics in every single aspect. So for me, and even from an operator, I come from 10 years in operations within this industry, I've always run the best venues with a range of age groups to be able to complement each other. So it's very hard to sort of say, because it's also area dependent, but as I said, widely I think it wouldn't be a breach for me to tell you anywhere from, I think 19 is probably our youngest to, I think 63 is our oldest. So anywhere between those ranges is the rest of the business.
And just to give you some further comfort on that point, Councillor, when the premises open, there'll always be a senior, experienced manager of the premises for the opening of the premises. So we would never put somebody in charge of a new shop who doesn't have any experience. That would be a key issue.
The question why I ask this, you're saying no less than 2 staff members. The age group is more of a comfort thing for me, really, I think, more than anything else. From what the objectors have said, the location, I know the location well. I do shopping there occasionally. It is a very busy area. It has been highlighted that areas of concern, school children. Now, and I get that you operate on many different venues, and you've got the experience, and Mr. Hughes, your enthusiasm of when you wake up and you want to see this. But in terms of how do you actually deal with this, as an actual example, you've got 11 school kids just suddenly surge in, or just when the doors open. I mean, how do you deal with this?
Sorry, I'll take you through that. I mean, I think it's a very important piece, and I think that's where some of the experience happens with this. There is a reason that we have fitted lobbies to every single premises we have, and we've actually retrofitted lobbies to existing premises that were here before my time. The reason for that is to be able to have that acknowledgement and that identification period. Somebody will always be located near the front of the shop, and if you have those lobby doors, it creates sort of a decompression chamber as such to stop, floods of people being able to rush in.
I'm just going to interrupt you there for a second. Sorry. On page 21 of the schematic, so if you just take me through, is that 2 sets of doors? Because I was not quite sure about that.
Yes, Councillor. So you'll have the first set of doors, which will also be mag-locked, which we discussed earlier, and then a further set of doors which will be automatic. So you can control that area widely by, if you're at the front of the venue, you will approach the front door, stopping people entering. In my experience as an operator, the majority of cases, no one is going to push past you, but if they manage to access the venue unimpeded, well, whoever that may be, then that is infinitely harder. So we've taken active steps in even the way that it's designed or laid out to make sure that that's dealt with.
Okay, in terms of security, over and above what you already have, if you said you've got minimum of 2 staff there, have you got any visions of having any security staff there? And do you have security staff? Those are a very loose question. I know I'm sure Lee was going to sort of punch me in the side. Do you have security staff at your other sites?
So we always deal with everything on a needs basis. As I said, our training is very extensive to the staff members, and we always try and make sure that we recruit people with good knowledge. I've previously recruited people with SIA badges to actually work on the shop floor because we understand it's there. But as I said, until we assess the opening period of the venue, which I would attend, our CEO, our COO would attend, we then do a full assessment as we monitor that opening of the venue very, very closely in the first month. And everything then is decided on that basis from our perspective.
And we do act on local intelligence as well. So, for example, in Croydon, the police communicated with us that they were having issues with knife crime in the area and asked us to put on an SIA, which we did. So if there's any local intelligence, that feeds into the local area risk assessment document, which is regularly updated. So if there is a change in risk, it will be slotted into the LARA.
On page 26 of our pack, on your CCTV and security, it says on 1, 2, 3, 4th point down, it shall be available for police viewing at a minimal delay. What is a minimal delay?
So for our purposes, we have 4K CCTV in most of our venues, I believe now, especially all the new ones. And any officer that attends that wants to view the footage will do so immediately, unimpeded. And normally the process is then for them to send us a link to an online submission portal with the DPA forms and everything else listed, which we will do so. As I said, I think that's the point for the minimal delay. Immediate viewing will be done instantaneously. Missing persons, we've helped with a number of cases across a number of different boroughs.
If you'd put 24 hours in there, that would have been great, because minimal could be 6 months, 3 months, depending on who you're talking to. But that's very good. If you move on to page 27, you put down in your local area risk assessment, which I imagine will be your work document as well, that a licensee will ban customers who engage in crime and disorder within or outside the premises. how are you going to manage outside the premises? And the other question would be why?
So a good example, we opened a premises recently in Ilford. We had members...
I know Ilford very well. I grew up in East London.
There you go, good. I spent most of my time playing basketball there as a kid. So, we had an issue actually where there was outside seating for a number of people on the high street, and people were using it to drink outside and everything else. And obviously on that point, we'd had the first discussion with the council, and it's not in our interest to let people in regardless of that. And all they wanted was for all of the venues in the premises not to allow them entry under any circumstances, hoping that they would then move off. We complied immediately with that. We banned them internally, and they were not permitted to enter the venue under any circumstances. So, again, for us, dealing with the local authorities and councils in terms of advice or guidance, for us, if we can be part of that, then that's brilliant.
In terms of if you do get undesirables, should we say, one category, another category of people having problems with gambling, which you have, through your systems, identify, do you share this information with other similar outlets such as yourself? As you can see, there's quite a few here, and different ones like betting shops, as a matter of policy.
It's difficult as a matter of policy. I think the self-exclusion and the Moses scheme the multi-operator self-exclusion scheme, deals with a lot of that. Banned customers in the area where we have issues like town radios, they will communicate those issues as well, which we always sign up to. But individual conversations between individual operators, not so much on that basis, although I have a good working relationship with the other AGC operator in the town, and in many locations we do share that information, but not as a matter of policy.
On page 30, you have saying limited staff floats. What is that?
So staff floats relates to the amount of money that staff members will hold. The reality is almost none.
I thought you were saying about staff floating around or something. I don't know. I get the float bit. But on the same page, in terms of maintain contact with local traders and police, including working with police to combat local issues. How do you envisage to do that? Or, because you're an operator already, how do you do it currently?
Yeah, so an example that we gave in Ilford, there are many, many more. Any police that would ever, we have a very good relationship. For example, Reading comes out to me. We have the best CCTV on the high street, and we have working relationships now with a number of investigators, police officers, because they use us if there is any instances out on the high street. Nothing to do with us at all, but we have a very good working relationship on that basis. That opens the channels and the doors for any information or any advice and guidance, and we're not here to reject the advice and guidance given. We, under no circumstances commercially, want to be a hub for any antisocial behaviour or disorder in any way, shape or form. So we're always very active in engaging with that.
Your CCTV, there's nothing actually on the schematics, again, on page 21, nor would I ask you to put it on. I mean, if you sort of drew a few X's to show me, but I think I'm sure, Daniel, in terms of whether to be any potential reviews or anything, I think you would be open to that. Just to double check, dot the I's, tick the T's, regards CCTV camera. Because on the lobby, do you have that face recognition cameras? I read something in your pack that you have in most of your premises. Is that correct, or am I?
So no, not facial recognition in that sense as well, but we will have CCTV monitored directly above the door. It's not an automated system in that sense. I don't think the data protection and the GDPR side of things is quite where it needs to be in this country yet, and it might be a little bit too big brother for us. But yes, CCTV, to answer your previous question, in numerous locations throughout the shop floor, we do not place anything with any blind spots. Outside, lobby, key areas through the business are always monitored.
Chair, if it would help the committee as well, should this licence be granted, if you would like us to provide a plan for identification purposes showing the machines and the CCTV, then we'd be more than happy to do that.
Just in terms of looking at your policy and your training that you have, sorry, councillors, I've only got a few more questions before I let you guys loose on it. How many sort of SARS reports do you normally get annually per store? Say, you mentioned Ilford. I know Ilford. Ilford or even Reading. I know Reading as well, actually. So how many average sort of SARS do you get?
In terms of subject access requests, very minimal. You know, in terms of the Reading piece is very different because it's external, but in terms of anything to do with our business, potentially nothing. You know, in some locations, one or two in others. It really does vary in regards to that, but the point I was trying to make earlier was that actually the way that we've subscribed our venues is assisting with police out in the high street and the locality, nothing to do with us, but we're actually assisting in that because our CCTV is at the level of 4K, which is incredibly helpful in identification in a number of cases.
Something about your test purchases. Now, this is just to very concrete. I heard what you said properly. That this is an independent company that comes in and does a test purchase, and because I believe that that is a positive. But how does it actually work in practice? You don't get a phone call 24 hours beforehand, so you know, watch out. There's going to be.
I do understand the criticism in regards to, or the scepticism in regards to having something organised through a trade body, but back to work incredibly closely with the Gambling Commission, and those reports are submitted to the Gambling Commission. Now, we have subscribed to this. This hasn't been mandatory in the past, and we've always done so, because, as I said, we believe that 100% pass rate is very, very likely for all of our venues. Because of the training, because of the understanding, and because of the staff numbers and everything else. So.
I think the trade organisation and Serve Legal as a company would lose all of their credibility if there was ever a suggestion that these were advance noticed, that people knew that they were coming in. It would bring the whole system down.
Yeah, I understand that, and although it's not a consideration that we take on board, but there is a cost attached to this, I would imagine, I know of. So, Councillors, any questions on Councillor Hagler?
Thank you, Chair. Just going to the local area risk assessment again, and on page 23, and obviously one of the concerns that we're bringing up was about children and about how we're going to work along with the prevention. Can you just describe a little bit more about your posters? Obviously, you're saying here that you've got them inside, but by that time, obviously, people are inside. Are there any outside? Will there be any outside on the building?
Yes, so there is a mandate to have no alcohol and no under 18 signage on the front door itself, visible to the high street, whether that door be closed or open. So yes, there is always signage available for everyone to understand that.
They're not small signs either. They couldn't be missed. And
also, I notice you've got leaflets as well. Would you be working within the community with those leaflets? So, as you can see, when you did, which was really good, the risk assessment, but you're looking at Haystown Community Centre, you're looking at Mind. Would that be something that you would work with those communities as well around the prevention?
I think we have great relationships with a number of charities, in the sector. I personally go to 4 meetings a year to deal and to speak to and to consult with a number of these charities, and I would be more than happy to pass that information on to yourself to be able to initiate a bit of a synergy on that front.
Chair, Councillor, if the licence is granted, we, as I said, we would be very happy to liaise with the local ward councillor in that basis as well, just to make sure that what we're telling you today is not just an offer for the licence, it's the way we trade.
Thank you. Oh, it's really good to hear that. And the final question, actually, from me would be just about if you do have some, because obviously this is what we don't want, so someone comes in, they're a regular customer, and then we start having antisocial behaviour inside the premises. You put them outside, obviously. What does happen? What's your general, how you've dealt with it before, and if it's ongoing as well, so it continues?
So we have massive training and guidance, and then even practical guidance that every single venue manager has to go for themselves, and then subsequently train it out to their teams. in terms of risk assessment for vulnerable people, de-escalation processes in regards to that, monitoring the right level of support and guidance and help, but also making sure that if somebody becomes, aggressive in any way, that's also dealt with. As I said, in the vast majority of cases that I've ever dealt with, they are done correctly, and ordinarily those people are put conditions on in regards to either speaking to the venue manager the first time, or we take the active decision to bar them. We do so with any suspect of criminal activity as well. And sometimes we take the assertive action that we will take that step first rather than engage in a process. But often it's a conversation. Next time that they visit, they'll be taken to one side before they begin to gamble or anything along those lines, and that conversation and assessment then made. But we're always erring on the side of caution for our purposes.
Councillor Nelson West.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just the same as before, the risk assessment. Could they be turned into parts and conditions? There's too many to go through all of them, but they're very concise and very, very good. The risk assessment is.
Would you like me to make some submissions on conditions at this stage, Chair, or? Okay.
Are we done? Yep. Right, can we go to our very brief closing remarks from each party? It goes in reverse order. Daniel.
Got no closing remarks, Chairman. Thank you.
I know we've got no representatives here from interested party, but it's all on record. The weighting doesn't affect the weighting just because nobody's turned up. We weight it appropriately. It's just that we can't question what's been presented, but just to let everybody know. Sir, the floor is yours.
Chair, thank you. I will be brief. I've tried to submit written documentation that deals with the representations, and obviously we sent those out to those who made representations. I go back to the point that we would, if this licence be granted, work with the local councillor and any of these people who've made representations to make sure that they are as comfortable as our neighbours are in the other 26 locations that we've been granted a licence. I would hope that you found Darren a very forthright, honest and impressive company representative for a company who takes their due diligence and regulatory compliance particularly seriously. I'd ask you to read my closing submissions at paragraph 20. I'm not going to read them out. Paragraph 21, this is a permissive piece of legislation. And I just go back to what the Chair said. You as a licensing authority want good, responsible operators. In my submissions, you won't find a more responsible operator coming to ask for an adult gaming centre licence than my client today. Can I just finally deal with conditions, which is dealt with at paragraph 10 of my outline at page 4, where I've relied on the Gambling Commission guidance. So that's one of the documents that you need to make sure that if you grant the licence, it's in accordance with the guidance issued by the Commission. And what the Commission says is that licensing authorities should not turn down applications for premises licences where relevant objections can be dealt with through use of conditions. And then my bullet point underneath that, conditions should only be added where it is necessary. That's what the Gambling Commission is, necessary to do so. And even then, such conditions need to be proportionate to the circumstances, requiring a response relevant, directly related, fair and reasonable. It's my submissions in relation to this application that it isn't necessary to impose any conditions on the premises licence. There are mandatory conditions which go on every premises licence, which your officers highlighted in the very clear report for you today. But in my submissions, and you'll be assisted by your legal advisor under the case law of Daniel Thwaites against Sohel Massey Residents Association, where the High Court said there needs to be real evidence, and I would submit that whilst there are concerns raised, there's no real evidence that we won't be able to be reasonably consistent with the licensing objectives, and it would be unnecessary to put conditions on the licence. backed up by the fact that we will work with anybody who wants us to work with them. So any of the agencies that are brought out in the Lara, and the councillor who made the opposition, and also any of the other parties that objected to the application. It's on that basis, Chair, I would commend the application and say that the mandatory conditions would be sufficient in this case.
Thank you. Right, we're going to deliberate now, so if you'd like to take all your bits and pieces, telephone, laptops, etc., and then we will call you back once we've come to a decision. Thank you.